It's IndieSeen. It's back. It's late July, and we're here to talk about a movie that is the most independent of all independents because it was made by my good friend Sujewa Ekanayake, the one who brought me into the world of slow cinema and independent art house movies, and he makes them, and he's got a new one that just came out. It just crossed 400 views on YouTube, so congratulations. And it's also the movie that he made while also making another movie. So we're going to talk about all of that. And also Amanda Haynes, who is also featured in the documentary that we're discussing here tonight, The Last Days of Joseph Koch Comics Warehouse, which again is available on YouTube. The link is down below, so you can check that out after this conversation. Not during this conversation, certainly. But yeah, so we've got Sujewa and Amanda here to talk about the doc. And Amanda's here for just a bit, and then we'll get into some more in-depth stuff with Sujewa on the making of the documentary, which you put together in 7 days. That's crazy.
Because I was in prep for the other movie, it was easy to switch over to that one.
Yeah. Well, you're wearing many hats in addition to the one that you're wearing right now.
That's
so, all right. Well, how you doing, Amanda?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right. So how did you get involved with this with this documentary, which is about the closing of it's in the title, Joseph Koch Comics Warehouse?
Well, I kind of got roped into it. Sujewa was making it, and I happened to be here.
And the full reason is she knows about graphic novels, graphic memoirs.
Something.
And I wanted to get another voice in there, not just myself and Joe Koch, and especially to focus on that world of comics.
Okay. So yeah, not to give everything away, but I mean, let's talk a bit about Amanda since you're here. In the documentary, you talk about you've got a penchant for graphic memoirs in particular. You kind of got into SANDMAN a bit, which is, if you're going to get into comics and selectively, that's a big one to get into. It's great. But is there a reason that you gravitated to the memoirs of in the graphic novel format? And do you also like reading like regular, straightforward books about, like autobiographies and biographies and things like that?
Well, as I say in the documentary, I think the graphic format works especially well for memoirs because our memories are largely words and pictures. And graphic literature is a combination of those things, words and pictures. And, I don't actually read too much memoir or autobiography. I mean, sometimes it's not a particular interest of mine, but yeah, sometimes.
And you connected with the SANDMAN, you said in the documentary.
Yes, that was a big event for me. I read the SANDMAN, and it was my life. that is my life.
Because you mentioned that in the doc, and you don't have to get too into it if you don't want to, but I was curious, what does it mean to have a life that is, you see yourself in the pages of SANDMAN, which is a wild book that has had several volumes and different kind of types of stories in it. What did you connect with specifically in Neil Gaiman's writing, and also the various art collaborators you worked with?
And was it related to narcolepsy?
Yes. I have narcolepsy. I was diagnosed when I was about 16. So as a consequence, I am very familiar with the dreamland. I know it's something that it exists independent of the human mind.
Like a collective unconscious kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And you used to, prior to the diagnosis, you would have waking dreams.
I did, yeah.
And you would see creatures that are from other dimensions, you thought.
Well, no, I never thought they were from other dimensions. I just knew they weren't from this material plane. I knew I was, hallucinating on some level. I experienced things like what they call hypnagogic hallucination, what they call sleep paralysis. That's a scary one, sleep paralysis, for anybody who's experienced that. And now sleep paralysis is something actually that happens to everybody during we dream. or when we dream, the body, paralyzes itself so that we don't go around, doing all the things that we're doing in our dreams. But sometimes a person wakes up, a part of your brain wakes up before the brain has turned off the paralysis. So you wake up, you're half conscious, and you can't move, and you have no idea what's happening.
And was that similar to Sandman?
Well, I don't know if that as such happened in Sandman, but things like that.
There's, it's interesting because, well, first of all, I've heard of sleep paralysis, but mostly in the context of, I think what they called night terrors, which I guess is like the nightmare version of that, where you are conscious coming out of a dream state, but you can't move, but you're also sort of in the middle of a nightmare. That's what makes it like kind of really terrifying.
Well, night terrors, I believe, are something that's distinct from nightmares, right? A nightmare it's just what we call a dream that frightens us. A night terror is a specific pathology that happens to some people. It generally starts in childhood, and it's I mean, I can't go into detail about it because I'm not an expert, but it tends to be repeated dreams that have that are very frightening, hence the term night terror. That again happens to some people, but not others. And like I said, it typically shows up in childhood.
And I think some UFO abduction stories have been connected to the sleep paralysis situation.
Yes. Yes, I have always looked at those UFO abduction stories, and you've noticed they tend to happen at night when people are asleep or they're near sleep, or they're driving down a road at night. Nobody gets abducted by an alien at 12 o'clock at work. That just doesn't happen. So,
That's something that I probably even subconsciously have known my entire life, but I've never actually thought about it. I don't think I've ever had a conversation where it's spoken out loud. Like, I've never heard of an alien abduction story taking place during the daytime. That's fascinating. Back on the Sandman, the idea of the collective unconscious, I think the best example of that is the dream library, where it contains, billions of books that are essentially all of the works that have been, created by mankind, but also all of the books that have been imagined and never written by mankind. So you could have like 1 trillion Stephen King novels or something like that. That gets to the idea of this kind of shared, dream state. So yeah, I'm getting some good insight here. I thought you were going to tell me that your life, you see yourself as having been trapped in a hotel where there's a convention of serial killers or something,
no.
which one of the storylines, or dealing with the fates and furies.
She's super into the dream world, writes down her dreams, and and is very engaged with it. So I think that's the connection to
that
Sandman.
is the connection. Yes.
And we get a look at in the
serial killer convention, and I don't want to be.
What's that?
If the food's okay, I'll go.
Well, no, you wouldn't. You would.
Depending on what kind of serial killer convention, you definitely don't want to eat the food.
But I like some of the hotel setups. Like when I did some film shoots at hotels, they got pretty good coffee, and they have like a good breakfast thing. So yeah, I'll risk it.
I'm just saying the brisket might also be Bob.
That's
depending on who you're talking about. But no, it's as far as the Sandman and the interest in comics and the kind of autobiographical comics, we get a look at some of your I guess you might call them like journals. They're drawings and sketches, right?
You call it fan art. It's just all writers and artists, they keep little notebooks where they just draw and write random things.
Mm-hmm.
You just do it without thinking. And what I do sometimes is I copy down, pictures from the various graphic works that I've read or looked at. It's a fascinating process, and it really helps you to understand, the art of it.
Filmmakers take a lot of photos and videos on their iPhones as they walk around.
Is that your kind of equivalent to that, Sujewa, or do you also keep a like kind of a sketchbook or a notebook where you jot things down, or are you pretty much just like shooting and keeping a video diary?
Video diary on my phone, even including photos and video of shows that I'm watching, some shots that I like, etc., or things that I don't like sometimes. But I also keep notes. But important for filmmakers to shoot some video or take some still photos, I think almost every day, just to stay in touch with the medium, because fundraising or script writing or editing could take you away from the actual filmmaking a lot. And then when you get back into it, you're kind of out of practice. So it's a good idea to keep your eye sharp for the visuals.
Yeah, and I imagine that's sort of the same thing with the I'll just call them journals. You call it fan art, but I mean I didn't like freeze frame any of that, because there's some drawings of like Odie from Garfield, and then also some art from the Dark Crystal, but then there's also notes and dialogue and some things that were kind of transcribed from comics. It was kind of a fascinating insight there, Amanda. So I did appreciate getting a glimpse there. As far as I guess the other autobiographical stuff, I mean, you talked about Joe Sacco, you talked about Persepolis. Have you been curious reading those to step into some of the other genres of comics, like the superhero stuff, or even other just kind of like the weird offshoots?
Well, I have in the past I've read plenty of stuff that wasn't memoir oriented. Like I mentioned, I was really big into manga when I was
Mm-hmm.
so that was mostly what they call shoujo stuff. A lot of fantasy, a lot of wizards and witches, and pretty boys, manga stuff.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Cool.
And you have a book now, yes?
Yes, I do. I do have a novel.
Yeah, A Joyful Noise. So we'll send you a copy when it's ready.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
not graphic. It's just straight prose.
Yeah, we talked about it she talked about it
I want to correct an error that I made. I
Okay.
was talking about Joe Sacco's Footnotes in Gaza, and I said that it had been published last year. Well, it hadn't. It had been published in 2009.
2009. Okay.
Yeah. But in any case, it couldn't be more timely right now. Seriously,
Yeah.
everybody go out and get that. Get Footnotes in Gaza by Joe Sacco. It will very much put current events in context.
Unfortunately, books like that are good for like decades of the conflict that's been going on forever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've not read it, but I mean, you talk very passionately about it in the doc and also here, so I'll have to put that on my reading list.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging out, and yeah, I'll catch you later.
We'll have her on when the book comes out.
Okay.
All right. Special guest is out.
Woo! All right.
You didn't like the documentary. That's not allowed.
Oh, it's allowed. I don't know where to start. I want you to start by just telling me how the doc came to be. I mean, there's a bit of a preamble in there, but lay it out for folks who haven't seen it yet. The high level version.
Yeah, I went to. I'm making another movie, so I was testing out gear and getting perks or rewards together for a big fundraiser. So I went to Joe's shop to find spaceships, comic books, other stuff that I could give away, interesting stuff that I thought maybe wouldn't exist in a lot of stores. And while I was there, I found out he was closing, and he's been up and running for about 35 plus years now. Kind of a big deal in the comics world, in the collecting world, and especially in Sunset Park and New York. So I thought I actually wanted to get just what you saw at the end, just the shots of the warehouse, the long shots of the warehouse. I wanted to get that, and then I did a brief interview with him, and then I thought, oh, it might be interesting to get lot more interviews about the history of the place, because once the place closes down and Joe retires, and all the books are removed to various places, and this place is shut down, we're not going to have any of that stuff in one place anymore. So, within even a few months, it's going to be like something as if it never existed when you go to that place. And like a lot of places that we go to now, there are banks and gyms or whatever, right? So I wanted to document that just to have so that down the road, local people can look at it or comics people can look at it and say, oh, yeah, we used to have that. And that's what it looked like. And that's the story. And maybe this is something we can bring back.
Yeah.
Purely documentation. I mean,
Yeah.
then I wanted to add some other stuff to make it more interesting and add some fantasy comics type visuals, because the comic books are gateways to other worlds and other places.
Yep. So did you know about this place before you kind of decided to go there for the perks?
Yeah. I think the last time I was there was like 10 years ago. So it's amazing how time flies, but the place was still there. The person, Joe Koch, was still there. And the place looks pretty much the same from like 10 years ago. It's almost like, after a certain time period, in places like this, time stops. And I worked at a used bookstore in Maryland called All Books Considered, and that had like 40,000 volumes. And this place reminded me a bit of that place also.
So did you have a history with comic books, or is this kind of your first like foray into like really getting into that world?
Back when I was a teenager, late teens, I think, while still in junior high or high school, I collected comics. I think X-Men, G.I. Joe, Batman, stuff like that. But then I grew out of it and never really got back into it. But I'm aware of the comics world. I keep in touch with it here and there, especially with all these movie adaptations coming out.
Yeah.
But it is a very interesting medium. It's almost like it's almost like the people's cinema. Movies for people who can't afford to make movies. The images and the stories. You can pretty much do a story of a film in a comic book format. So if the filmmaking becomes impossible, people could make comic books out of their movie ideas.
Yeah, and that's one of the. This is sort of a tangent, but there's the recent Brad Pitt movie F1 about Formula One racing, directed by Joe Kosinski. And one of the things I thought about while watching it was he does stuff. I don't know, a lot of it, from what I understand, was practical and in camera and achieved through editing and not necessarily through digital effects. But a lot of the angles he got, the perspectives, the places he got into with his camera reminded me of comics. Specifically going back to like Jack Kirby and showing things that would be impossible to see in real life, but we're seeing it in real life somehow up on the screen. I thought that was really cool kind of moment.
And the graphic novel format for grown-ups, especially the graphic memoirs, those really remind me of certain type of indie films that focus on just character-driven stories, and those they're very cinematic. I like just the idea of those novels existing. Anything that you want to do as a movie, but perhaps you can't do, you could, just the cost is more, cost and the number of people involved is greater for making movies, even a small movie. But if you have the skills, you can create a graphic novel or a graphic memoir out of it.
Yeah, and a lot of people, do use that as a gateway sort of into Hollywood, or into getting that made into a movie. I know they adapted Persepolis, and retained kind of that same look and feel of the comics on the screen in terms of the animation.
Or even if it's not adapted to a movie, just to have the story in a visual format. If that format is the best, and I think for some graphic memoir stories, it's more interesting to people to have the visual format.
Yeah, and also, I mean, even looking at, I'm fascinated by feature film making of art books,
Mhm.
specifically ones that lay out like a lot of the storyboards and the concept paintings. You can almost kind of deconstruct the film back to the original ideas, and sometimes those the original ideas and the things they abandoned are much more interesting than what they ended up putting on film.
Right.
Um,
Back in
so
the day when effects were expensive to do, I'm sure storyboards and the sort of the comic book version of the movie uh, probably were more interesting um, compared to what actually ended up on the screen. I've seen that with Star Wars, Blade Runner, Dune.
yeah. Um, so question, you went there 10 years ago and you talked, you interacted with Joe, I assume. Did he remember you 10 years later when you saw him again?
Yeah, yeah. You remember? We chatted.
Okay. Was there any hesitancy about like, following him around for a couple of days and interviewing, or did you have to do a hard sell, or was like, yeah, sure, why not?
No, no. He liked the idea because anything that brings in more attention to the closing and the final sale is useful for him. And also, he liked the idea of there being a documentary about the place.
I'm curious. I know the warehouse is still open
Mhm.
for the next. I mean, this is going to be going up on Friday the 25th, and I believe it closes on July 31st, the end of the month. Correct?
31st, the first, second, certainly by the third, it'll be done. I think if anyone's planning on visiting, uh, probably best to do it at the latest on the 31st.
Yeah. But I'm curious, like, why, aside from wanting to get that out there to kind of draw more attention to the warehouse and maybe get some good business for Joe at the final days, it is the last days of this warehouse.
Mhm.
Why not wait and capture like the actual final days? And I mean, we don't. That's another question I had. I don't, aside from you and Amanda, I don't think I saw any other people in there. Is it heavily trafficked, or is it very light? Were you able to interview anybody who was there while you were filming?
I filmed about three separate trips on three different days for the movie, and no, the traffic is not heavy because Joe does a lot of his stuff. He ships all over the world, so at a certain part of the day, he has a team that puts together pallets and boxes that need to get shipped out. So there's some people who come by, and previously he was doing regular visits by appointment only. So it wasn't really run like a giant retail business, more of a warehouse that ships stuff out. And if someone wants to come, they can come and take a look. But they've opened it up during this last month or so, so that anyone could come in at any time between 12 and 7. Um, I don't know if I would have gotten anything that's much more interesting besides possibly some more interviews with some customers. Um, if we waited 2 more weeks to get it done, I really wanted to get it done while it was out I wanted to get it done and out while the place was open, so there would be a couple of weeks for people to visit. People, especially people who've been there like myself a long time ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, if I'm going to go, I need to go now. They're about to close." So
Yeah.
as a reminder to the community, the people who know about the place, I wanted to get it out. Um, so it wasn't important to me that we show literally the actual the final 2 weeks, but we got footage from 3 days in the middle of July, which was part of the last days of the warehouse.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The problem I think that I had with the documentary is I had a certain expectation going in
Mhm.
that we would focus mostly on the last days of this warehouse. And honestly, I mean, the interview segments comprised maybe 15 minutes of this hour and 13-minute documentary.
Mhm.
There's a 10-minute or a 9-minute preamble
Mhm.
where you're kind of testing out the camera. You're explaining, why you went there,
Mhm.
but the voiceover is almost like an audio commentary of a film of you testing out a camera,
Mhm.
and then you're talking.
The interviews are about 40 minutes, about 20 plus for Joe, and then 15 or so with Amanda.
I don't know if that's true, but I mean, they're so chopped up and divided in this documentary that perhaps it's only the relevant information that I could say is like 15 minutes. But I mean,
Maybe
you
that's what
get,
it felt like.
well, that's the thing is like watching it, you ask one question, he answers briefly, and then you cut away to like footage of leopards and people in cosplay.
Mhm.
And then you cut to Amanda and she's talking about her novel. And then you cut back to Joe and you ask him like two questions. And then you're looking at, sweeping shots of the Brooklyn Bridge. It feels like trying to mask a lack of content
Mhm.
by putting in a lot of padding.
It's not.
Well, but I'm just saying that's what it feels like. And the thing is, I can't recommend people. I was excited to watch this documentary.
Mhm.
I started collecting comics the year before this warehouse opened in 1988. I started collecting at 10 years old and like hardcore collecting and reading, and it's a passion. And I follow the industry, and comic book stores are in a lot of trouble, and they have been for a long time. So reading about this place I hadn't heard of before, and it's a comics warehouse. I'm like, oh, this is going to be kind of an insightful history of this warehouse, maybe some insight into what's going on in the comics retailer scene, maybe interviews with people who go there and are really upset that this place is closing down, some personal information about Joe. The only thing I got from him really was the fact that he is allegedly a fan of comics, but he talks about them purely in the sense of business.
Mhm.
And we get a little bit of, he talks about, yeah, things were kind of good with Marvel, the movies a little bit ago, but now they're not as good. He talks about his brother who collected Jack Kirby original artwork in the early 80s and bought up a bunch of it for dirt cheap. I'm like, I want to see that movie.
Mhm.
Right. So, but I didn't learn anything really about this place or why it's important or why I should care. And in terms of it being a documentary, it is literally documenting the warehouse. It felt like something you do for an insurance video. Like you got to go through and capture footage of all
Right.
of the stock and all of the hallways,
Mhm.
but I didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, not every project is for everyone, obviously. But Joe did talk about the history of the place and about the industry. Yeah, they are cut up into 1 to 2 minute pieces, and but yeah, the entire interview with Joe was close to about 30 minutes, and I think I used about 20 minutes in the movie.
And that's what I said. It was about 15. I would, if you say 20 minutes, that's fine.
Mhm.
It's hard to say because we don't get very long stretches of this kind of back and forth until much later into the film.
Mhm.
And some of those questions would lead to other more interesting questions, but we never quite get there.
Mhm.
And that it was frustrating because it was just kind of pinballing around this stuff. And also, I mean, Amanda's great, she has a perspective on comics, but neither you or her are comic fans.
Mhm.
Now you had read comics earlier on, and I think that having that, even just that little soliloquy about reading them and kind of growing out of them, that would have been interesting because it's like, why are you making this movie? Aside from I stumbled into this place looking for something,
Mhm.
I found out it was closing, so I'm going to document it. That's all right, but there's nothing personal there. I don't feel a personal connection to anyone or anything in this movie, which I think the best kind of documentary is one that invites the viewer into a world that they don't know
Mhm.
and invites them also to care.
Ideas for the part two and the series, maybe.
I would welcome that. I mean, I would like to know, like, how did, aside from a personal business, a business standpoint, I mean, he got in 88, comics were doing pretty good. The 90s were booming, especially if he's dealing with international crazes and he talks about like variant covers and stuff like that. How did that affect his business? How did the crash, in the early 2000s, how did that affect it? The Marvel craze, did that, see any kind of a boom? he talks about he doesn't deal in new comics. He does have some kind of an arrangement with Forbidden Planet, but he says we get new comics a year after they come out. And they're just kind of like people sell their collections and that kind of stuff. I would watch a documentary specifically about the business of how this place runs. We never see any other employees. You mentioned that there are shifts of people packaging and palleting things up to ship up to other places. Where are those folks? How do they feel about working for Joe? Do they feel sad about this place closing and being out of work? Joe's retiring, but they say, yes, we're moving and shutting down. I don't know what that means. What's going to happen? Okay, but he says a couple of times, yeah, we're moving. And then he says later, we're moving and shutting down. So where is that moving to? The landlord is going to turn the place into something else. So what happens to the inventory? If it does, the stuff that doesn't sell in the next week, does it get liquidated? Is it thrown out? Does it go to auction and someone's going to get wealthy off that? Could you talk to somebody who maybe is like kind of almost in an eBay fashion, like waiting for this thing to close so they can buy up stuff and see if they can do anything with it? Are there other retailers in the neighborhood who see the same kind of trend coming? Did he have to shut down just because he's retiring, or is there a business consideration to it?
I think it was due to the rent, as he said in the documentary.
Okay, but that's the thing. It's due to the rent. But does that necessarily mean he has to retire? Or is it because did he see the rent as like, well, maybe it's a sign to close up shop? I don't know how he feels about any of this stuff.
So good stuff for the part 2.
Could have been in the part 1. I know you wanted to, you had the itch to make something while you're putting together 53 spaceships. But again, I'm watching it. I'm trying to, because I know a lot of people who are into comics. I was fully ready to say, hey, check this out, but I can't.
Okay.
There's a 2-minute commercial at the beginning of this for the closing of the warehouse, and I feel like the next hour 10 was a stretched out version of that commercial, the whole bunch of interstitials that have, I know you said, it leads into the fantasy, these interstitials, the worlds that are created by comics, but a lot of it's so random that you could say, well, I photographed a stapler, and staplers have appeared in comics before, so they're kind of relevant. They're just not connected. I don't feel like people who speak the language of comics are going to make that connection.
Yeah, I like those shots. It's a good break from the talking heads, and also there's some humor in between what is said in the interviews and what we see after that. But yeah, I use transitional segments on a lot of my movies, so I continued that in this movie also.
Sure, and but I would say I've watched a few documentaries about comics. The biggest one I think was probably Comic Book Confidential, which came out in the late 80s. That covers the entire history of the medium up to 1986 or 87, I think. And they did much of the same thing, transitions between the different interviews, but they were comic centric, focusing on panels or people drawing or, kind of going about the days, their business of creating comics. Like we did get to see Art Spiegelman, who gets kind of a shout out in your film talking about Mouse.
Right.
We got to see him like at work and printing raw comics and stuff, not raw comics, but the comic book series called Raw. But it all tied together. It was a piece. Had you thought about, and maybe it was a rights thing, I don't know, but like showing comics panels or,
I wanted to not do in the transition scenes largely nothing too much to do with comics except, directly, like shots of comics, right? But there is some cosplay happening in there. I mean, some shots of, I was looking for some shots of comic book conventions. I didn't see any of those in my stock footage library, but something like that could have worked. Someone drawing comics could have worked.
Yeah.
So for the Netflix series, we could interview someone actually working on a comic, while then we can cut to stuff happening at the warehouse. One thing that I do want to see more documentaries of is just a pure documentation of spaces, like an hour and a half, 2 hours of shots of a library, of a bookstore, warehouse, whatever's closing, or even not closing. Like even something like an Apple store could be interesting. Even without any story, I would enjoy watching like a hour-long, 2-hour-long documentation of an Apple store, just because when we interact with those places, typically, there's you're there to buy something, you're being guided, you're there for a limited amount of time. So it's to me, these places that we use are interesting as kind of like how we look at buildings from ancient history, but we're living through them now, and so it's sort of another perspective. So that I don't think that's a genre of documentaries, but maybe it is something to look into creating.
I was with you on like the bookstore idea, but an Apple store,
Mm-hmm.
those things are pretty sparse, Sujewa. You can get the full feeling of an Apple store just by going into one and looking around for about 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
They're not that deep.
The one
It's like
here, I
it's
think,
white spaces and phones on display.
no, we have a giant Apple store here, and there's 2 interesting Apple stores here. Actually, 3 interesting Apple stores in New York. They're all gigantic. There's one that's 24/7. Then
Okay.
there's one that's in Soho that used to be some other old building, and it's got like 3 floors. Then there's one in near BAM that has a very interesting, almost looks like a spaceship front. That to me is interesting. But yeah, some of the Apple retail places are small, especially at the malls. And yeah, you wouldn't need a 1-hour documentary or documentation of that. 15 minutes of that stuff. But some of the more unique flagship stores, 1 hour, that could work.
So I guess I'm curious, you talk about wanting to go in and do purely documenting, like capturing on film or video in this case, the places. Do you have any interest in the people who work there or the people who kind of patronize them?
Oh, depends on the place, of course. Yeah, it would be interesting if this was being done over a longer period of time, we would have gotten a lot of the usual things that are covered in documentaries: customers, positive stories, negative stories, workers, why they work there, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that in a regular documentary, that stuff would be covered. But I'm saying as a genre, a new genre of documentaries. I think someone did a documentary like that about malls that were closed, and that might have been just shots of malls. They would go inside and they would videotape it. So that idea does exist. I'd like to see more of that.
There is one, I don't know if it's out or if it's coming out, but there was one about malls where people they kind of took them over and turned them into like commune apartments or something like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I think I saw the trailer for it, but I never saw the actual film.
And in I Am Legend, those shots of New York City shut down, I thought those were great. I thought, let's spend 2 hours, just have them walk around, shut down New York City, not much happening, then get to the story in the last 5-10 minutes. But no, they did something.
Yeah, I mean, given the way I Am Legend turned out, I would be fine of just ignoring whatever that thing was supposed to be about. Wow. So are you gonna? I mean, I don't know if you're kidding, but you're talking about like a part 2. Are you gonna do anything like filming anything with the actual last days, like next week of Joe's Place shutting down?
I'm supposed to go there tomorrow, no, Saturday, to pick out things that I might want to buy and sell. Yeah, we'll see what else is happening, and yeah, maybe additional stuff could be filmed, and it could be added to YouTube, and I could link to it from the documentary about the actual, actual last few days or the last day. We might. I'm looking at possibly doing a screening of the movie at the warehouse or somewhere else. Maybe at the warehouse. We'll see. One of the problems is they don't have AC, The entire
Oh,
place is not air conditioned, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to do a screening of a 1 hour and 13 minutes plus intro and Q&A event at the warehouse. But at some point, there will be some sort of a theatrical screening of the movie, maybe along with 53 Spaceships when it comes out in a couple of months.
here's a B plot or a question, a bit of discussion for the second part. A comic book warehouse that does not have air conditioning in New York City.
Mhm.
Anybody knows anything about comics, they need to be kept cool and dark.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they get warped and all kinds of messed up. Now, a lot of the comics,
I think they use fans, and they somehow the quality of the books are not affected.
well, and that's what that's you could do it in you could do 10 minutes of film on that of him describing how that works, because when you as you go through this warehouse, it looks kind of janky because a lot of the books, the boxes, the short boxes, I didn't know if I saw any long boxes, but they all look very old and kind of run down and warped. But yet the comics that we see, the few that we actually get to see, are all bagged. A lot of them are boarded, but even the graphic novels that are just kind of like laying out, they look like they're in pretty good condition. And in a place that doesn't have AC, you wonder, how is that possible? So just hearing him talk about that and his giant network of fans, and what does that do to the electric bill? I mean, has he ever considered getting air conditioning? Can he get air conditioning? Again, these little aspects that I think a comic book collector or a fan or someone who's interested just in business would wonder about. I don't know. I'm now that I'm asking these questions and getting these answers from you, I'm like, yes, I could watch an entire documentary just about the air conditioning in a comic shop.
It could be a Netflix series, The Last Days of Joseph Koch Comics Warehouse, the series, episode
Yes.
3, the air conditioning.
Or no AC for DC,
Hmm.
something like that. Yeah. But no, has Joe seen the finished doc?
Yeah, he liked it. I talked to him briefly a couple of days ago, but he's also doing like 100 other things because the warehouse is closing. So I didn't have a long conversation with him. But he enjoyed making the documentary, and I think I'm pretty sure he's seen it. But I've sent him links to a few things, so I'm not 100% certain. But I'll talk to him more about it when I'm back there on Saturday.
All
But
right.
some other people who have seen the place have liked it and commented that it's sad to see the place closing. I've gotten some likes on YouTube, and yeah, we'll have to see how other people respond to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we talked about this being your kind of interstitial film while you're working on 53 spaceships. So how's that going? We usually lead off the show with the 53 spaceships update, but let's get it here towards the end.
And it's going well, and this was good prep making of that movie because I found out that sound has to be done a certain way with these smaller cameras, and also the structure of you know filmed interviews, uh, transitional shots, and then the more filmed interviews. That's going to be in 53 spaceships. The the shots, the transitional shots will be of spaceships and aliens and alien worlds. So that was a good way to test out how that looked. And but I want to try to get the 53 spaceships movie to under 2 hours. So the transitional shots will have to be short, or the movie may end up having to be like 3 hours long, 4 hours long. But we'll see. I'm gonna try.
Four.
I'm gonna try to get it under 2 hours. Uh, so even if each spaceship we discuss for 2 hours, no, 2 minutes each, then we're already at 106 minutes. So that doesn't leave a lot of time. We're getting close to 2 hours. Anyway, the structure of the documentary is going to be similar to the structure of 53 spaceships. Um, I was, just for filmmakers in general, um, whatever subject you're interested in, putting together a small documentary about it is one, good for that subject, and two, good for you, just to get more practice before making another project, and to test out gear and test out how much time it actually takes to finish something. Even a small project like this took a lot of editing hours just to get it to the point where it's presentable. So it was a good practice exercise before I finish up the movie 53 Spaceships next month.
Now, you mentioned that you had like 40 minutes of interview time with Joe.
About
Or is
I
it?
think 20 plus with Joe and
Oh,
about 20 plus with Amanda.
oh, so combined the interview
I
time
think
was.
about 40. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. So yeah,
The
40 minutes.
documentary, the interviews are like 40 minutes. Then there's the intro, and then there's the end section, and then there's the other stuff, the transitional stuff. So that all adds up to about 73 minutes.
Okay. Um, but I guess so I was going to ask how much raw footage did you have, but including all the warehouse stuff and all that. And once you get that all together, how do you decide to break it down?
I think I
Or
started off with the two interviews. Like 15, 20 minutes of Amanda and almost everything. I think we used almost everything Joe said from Joe's interview. Oh, the third item that took up space was the warehouse walk, the walk through the warehouse that Joe did. That was 10 plus minutes. So that adds to the runtime also. Um, so I got those three segments cut together, and then I added, I put them together. I cut each segment, then I combine, sort of one after the other, alternated one after the other. Then that created the core of the documentary. Then we added the beginning, the end, and the transitions.
and then the kind of the fantasy stuff, and then you've got some comic book kind of like pow wham,
Right.
kind of breaks in there. I didn't, I was watching it, so I wasn't, making timestamps necessarily. But for those, how did you decide how long to make these little transitional pieces? Are they all the same length, or are those edited down from longer clips, or what?
Yeah,
How did
they're
you think
edited
about that?
down. I mean, all the transitions are edited down. It um, based on the needs. I mean, the flow of the story, and do we need 20 seconds here? Do we need 30 or 40 seconds before we go on to the next subject or the next interview segment? So just it was mostly based on how I felt about how much time was needed, and another goal was to keep those as short as possible. But some of those transitional shots I liked a lot, and so they were kept in. I think the longest transitional shots may get to like 30 seconds, but there a lot of them are 20 seconds or less.
Hmm. All right. Um, so I guess aside from kind of some of the editing techniques and flow that you're going to apply to 53 spaceships, was there something profound that you learned making this documentary that perhaps was a new experience for you as a filmmaker? Or was it just kind of like, oh, I learned something a little bit new here, but was there like a lightning bolt moment, like, oh, this is something new for me that I'm going to carry forward, and maybe even I wish I knew when I started out, decades ago.
Um, once you get once you dive into it, and if you keep at it daily, you can finish a movie relatively fast, but it's going to be stressful, and everything else will fall off. And that's not a horrible thing. So you kind of forget how difficult making a movie is, even a few days after it's done, after you've recovered. So I was reminded, oh yeah, the editing is going to be stressful. It's going to take forever. So yeah, I do want to make more of these unusual documentary type projects. I've done three of them. This is my third one, where we're primarily documenting either poets or bloggers I have an indie film blogger road trip that's on YouTube. So in between the fiction movies, I want to try to do more of these documentaries that show something, but maybe not necessarily in-depth documentaries about a certain subject, but just capture something for an hour and a half or so.
All right. Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's that, right? We talked a bit about spaceships. We talked about the warehouse documentary and possibly a future supplement to the warehouse documentary, which would be very cool to see.
Some clips, some stuff related to the documentary as to the actual final days. We'll see. When I'm over there, if I see something interesting, I may tape it.
Cool. All right. And yeah, ask them about the AC, because even if you don't film it, I just want to know, like, the whole fans, like, how many fans does it take? Like, just imagine. Yeah.
It feels, some in the aisles with the comics, it feels comfortable. It doesn't feel terrible, but I mean, I think maybe people just get used to it. Yeah, it is interesting how they maintain the quality of the paper in that space. But for regular filmmakers, for indie filmmakers, doing a little documentary project is good for fundraising, and it's good to remind people, yeah, I can actually make a movie and get it out. And here's an example, especially if you haven't made one in a long time.
Yeah.
And it's good to test out. It'll test out your gear. So the setup I have, that was a 1 hour and 13 minutes long 4K movie, and that was the first time that I had exported something like that. So I wasn't sure if that was possible to do, because these 4K movies, I think that was about 11 gigs compressed, but eventually there'll be 50 gig movies, 100 gig movies, 200 gig movies. 53 Spaceships is probably going to be huge, the file size wise. So we'll have to test out to see if the setup I have can actually handle that stuff. But yeah, making anything, short, fiction, feature documentary, fiction feature, a simple fiction feature, is a good way to make sure everything properly works, or to identify where the problems are before you do another project or a more demanding project. So it's recommended. Find a subject and make a quick documentary about it. See if it works.
Nice. All right. Well, sage advice from the man himself. Sujewa, thank you, and also thanks to Amanda for hanging out earlier.
Thank you,
and
Amanda.
talking about, yes, and kind of giving us some insight into the making of the film. And yeah, the last days of Joseph Koch Comics Warehouse is linked down below, so people can check out what we've been talking about here.
Right. See the leopards.
What was that?
See the leopards.
Yes.
See the elephants.
Yes, you can definitely check that out, and perhaps be as either enraptured as you had intended for them to be, or as baffled as I ended up being. But anyway, we'll be back probably next month talking about something or other. Maybe the supplement to this, or the spaceships, or just another.
Probably 53 Spaceships, the finished movie at the end of August. Let's see.
Are you going to start rendering it next week? Jeez.
We're constantly working on that movie. Hopefully by the third or so, I'll have the final dialogue scene scripted out, and that's all that remains to be filmed. I have all the shots of the spaceships already. I have B-roll of the city, city footage. So couple of minutes each for each of the spaceship stories. I mean, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5, and more shots of the characters running around New York looking for the spaceships. All that stuff will add up. So I think most of August I'll be busy filming that stuff, and at the end of August we're going to start putting it together.
Sweet. All right. Well, we'll be back to talk about that, and who knows, maybe something in between. But anyway, folks out there, if you like this show, please like and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications, all that business. Be sure to support Sujewa and all of his creative endeavors, which are linked down below, including the documentary we've been discussing here tonight. And yeah, until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care. Hey everyone, Ian here. I know, long time no see, but if you like the video you just watched, feel free to subscribe to Kicking the Seat right here, and also check out the playlist and recommended video right here. Thanks for watching.